Okay, there are very strict rules for lightning talks in this house, and that is you get exactly 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna start banging this so much that no one can hear you and you have to get off the stage. Hopefully you don't go right down to 5 minutes. It's nothing personal. We have a long list of people. We have 2 hours to get through them all. If you can make your talk less than 5 minutes, please feel free to do so.
We love that too, yeah.
So we have 2 stations here, and we're gonna take turns going back and forth. We'll have someone presenting here, and then as they approach the end of their 5 minutes, we will have you come over here if you're next on deck, and so we can go back and forth rapid fire. Are there any questions? How did I get so fabulous? It just came that way. All right, so we're gonna kick off here. Whoops.
Michelle Yuen.
Michelle Yuen. Michelle. And Katya. Katya, you're here?
Yeah, Katya.
Katya's gonna be on deck, so you're not like required to come up right away, but in a minute we'll get you set up on this side, all right?
All right, hi everyone, my name is Michelle Yuen, and today you and I will be doing some science research together in less than 5 minutes. That's some lightning fast science. Let's do this. All right, about me, my name is Michelle Yuen. I am a software developer for the Adler Planetarium in Chicago. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty freaking awesome. Thank you. More specifically, I work with the Zooniverse platform, zooniverse.org. You might be asking, what is the Zooniverse? Very good question. It is the largest platform for people-powered research, also known as citizen science. We enable volunteers from around the world to participate in real research projects from in multiple disciplines, from astronomy, biology, to the arts and humanities. We have over 2.5 million registered users and over 250 million classifications. All right, now that we get to know each other, let's do some science. Let me go through what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be looking for active asteroids. Surprisingly, scientists don't really know much about asteroids out there because there aren't a lot of active asteroids to study from. So that's what this project is. What we'll be looking for soon enough in the project, given an image, we're gonna be looking for a tail or a dust or gas-like cloud called a coma. If it has either of those, then it's a potential asteroid. It has comet-like activity is what we call it. Yeah, so let's get started. Also, if you're curious about how the project or the researchers got these images, it's actually from the Dark Energy Cam from an observatory in Chile. Okay, everyone can see this. All right, this is the science contribution interaction part now. Okay, I want you guys to clap if you see either a tail or a comet-like cloud in the focal point of this image. Okay, clap if you don't see any comet-like activity. I think I heard more yes for yes than no, so I'm gonna click yes. All right, congratulations, we just contributed to science. Amazing, great job everyone. Back to this. Oh no, presenter view. All right. So, okay, you may be wondering, wait, Michelle, do contributions like this really help researchers in their field? Absolutely. As an example, a similar project called Galaxy Zoo, one of our volunteers found this weird green blob when classifying galaxies. She asked the community about it. No one knew what it was, not even the researchers. Looking more into it, it's a galaxy-sized gas cloud that's caused by a neighboring black hole. Crazy, no one even knew about it until one of our volunteers pointed that out. So, all this to say, your contributions and curiosity make a difference. Ooh, okay, great job everyone. Thanks for listening to my talk. Here's my social medias. If you want to contact me, I do want to say that this universe is mostly grant funded. We do corporate volunteer events. So if you or your company are interested, please contact me. I'm over here. If you're in Chicago, please come reach out. I will give you free tickets to any of the museum. Not for 7,000 people, but like a small group is fine. Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katya. Or call me Kat if that's easier, or you could come up and meow at me. Either way works. So before I start, just a quick trigger warning. I will be talking about mental health and eating disorders. So if you don't feel comfortable, that's totally okay. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD, specifically combined type. So I thought it would be cool, ADHD-C, I could call myself the ADHD coder. And so I'm hoping to start a blog one day, but I haven't gotten to it because I procrastinated it. So what I really want to talk about today, though, is ARFID. Raise your hand if you know what ARFID is. A couple of people. Awesome. Well, so the reason why I want to talk about this is there's not a lot of awareness to this, because I was also diagnosed with ARFID when I was diagnosed with ADHD. I found out that a lot of people with ADHD also have ARFID. And here's what it is. It is an eating disorder called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. I like to call it extreme picky eating because that's what I was told growing up. And so food is very stressful for me. I come from a Hispanic household, so I was forced to sit at the table until I finished all my food. I was forced to try things I didn't want to try. And the thing about this eating disorder is that if I try to eat something and I don't, it's not like I don't like it, it's like a physical response. I get nauseous, I get anxious, it's not a great experience. And not a lot of people talk about it because when I first heard I had an eating disorder, I thought, I don't care about my weight, I don't count calories, I don't have an eating disorder. But the reason why this is an eating disorder is because there is possibility of malnourishment, which I did. I was very malnourished as a kid. There was a point in my adulthood where I was only eating like 400 calories a day. And so I wish more people talked about this and had, solutions, because all of the apps out there are just, counting calories or diets and stuff like that. That causes a lot of shame, a lot of judgment. And even just like events like this, like I couldn't eat lunch today because it had tomato in it. And yes, I could take the tomato out, but I know I'll get nauseous just eating it even without tomato. And so, but how do you share diet restrictions like that? Like it's like so random and so specific, like here's a long list of things I do not want to eat, so your event better, accommodate. Like, no, it's not, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to manage. And so during a hackathon, I created an app selfishly because I really needed a solution called Meal Mind. And if you go to the QR code, you can actually see the GitHub repo. It has a lot of bugs. I will tell you that right off the bat. I did it in under 2 weeks, and I was learning Next.js, TypeScript, Supabase. Would not recommend for a hackathon. But I want to refactor it from scratch and really build it up and start talking about it more and just build awareness for it. And really, my goal for this is to be able to give people a chance to have a food profile, so to speak, where they can track the foods that they like, they can track the foods that they don't like, they can maybe start to get encouraged to try new things. And so it's like, I tried pulpo the other week, which is like octopus, I think, I don't even know. But I liked it. So I'm like, okay, I can track that, and I can see, I tried octopus one time, so if I go to a tapas place, I can maybe try something else. And it might go well, it might go not well, but at least I can keep track of that. And especially with ADHD, I don't usually remember what I like or what I don't like, which is kind of weird considering, I should. But just the fact that food is such a stressful event, I don't even want to think about it. So it's like the first thing out of my mind, but the worst thing out of my mind, because I'll show up to Chipotle and order chicken instead of carnitas, and then I just, don't want to eat for the rest of the day, which is not fun. And so ideally, what I really want to have happen is being able to have a food profile that can be shared with friends and family, being able to create meal plans, because if I don't have a plan, I'm not gonna eat. I'll just keep coding and not thinking about it. And, or I'll look at the fridge and it's like, there's stuff there. I don't know if I want it, and I'm a hassle to feed. Just ask my boyfriend over there. It's not fun. And I just always relied on relationships, and I realized that it's time for me to empower myself with this and to not feel shameful about it, and to not have such an anxiety-inducing events 3 times a day. So please, you will have my phone number there. Please text me if you experience RFID or have any, experiences that I can put into the app, because I would love that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim, and I am a second career dev, junior developer at a small agency called Sierra Rails. Thank you. Is there anybody else in here that's a second career dev? Awesome. Did you guys go to a boot camp or college or anything? Yes? Show of hands. I am self-taught. I didn't have the money to go to college or anything because of previous school loans. So today I want to talk about how I supercharged my career with my prior experience being an auto mechanic, and how it helped me problem solve and debug problems every day. So when a customer brings a car to me, they say, hey, I have this weird noise in the right front when I go over bumps. Okay. So as an experienced mechanic, I already have some thoughts going in my head, like, okay, it might be a strut, ball joint. But am I just going to go blindly replace this strut? No. Very unhappy customer. So, what do? Well, you road test it. You verify the customer complaint first. You verify their concern. Same thing in code. If a customer is saying, your client, like, hey, when I submit this form, I get this error. I don't know why I did this early in my career, but why would I go rebuild the whole form? Doesn't make sense, right? So you road test the vehicle, you verify their concern. Okay, they do in fact have this noise. Bring it back into the shop, check things out, check the ball joint, okay, that's good. A lot of what has to do with problem solving is also not finding what's bad, but what's good. Figure out what's good first. There's nothing wrong with finding what's good, because eventually you will land on what's, faulty. So you check the strut, you see some fluid leaking out. Bingo, there it is. So now, you look up the procedures to replace this thing, and then what? Do you just give it back to the customer without testing it first? No, right? So you take it back on a road test, and the noise is gone now, but now the steering wheel is crooked. Because I took apart all their steering. Same thing in code, right? You fix one bug, sometimes you create more. That's why it's important to have tests, as I found out very early on in my developer career as well. So you fix the steering, you return it back to the customer, and now they're happy. So to any second career developers out there, I guess the moral of my story is use your past experiences to supercharge your career. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dominic. I'm from Mexico. Here in this RailsConf, I'm a scholar, and thank you. And my guide is Colin Gilbert. My topic is going to be traversing the depths of James source code. Just an introduction. A few days ago, I was tasked to try to understand some methods of the PageM. So I was wondering how can I make a shortcut and really understand what I was doing. So I built a brief acronym. In this case, is building life through reliable gems. And each of the first letter, the first is bin, the second, well, and it has some executable scripts. The second is lib, which is the most important piece of code of the whole gem. Then we have test, which is for testing, the readme, then the rake file, and lastly, the gem spec. So if you kind of try to memorize just the acronym, I think it's a little bit easy. And on the right side, you can see, or your left, I don't know, is just a visual of how gem structure is comprised of. So let's see Rails in action in this case. We just started a Rails new. We added the gem. We created one user model, and then we added the method. In this case, the one that I was after was pay_customer. So here comes what we is useful in this case is, okay, the first method that we use is source_location. I think we saw this in the first keynote, and we need to call it on the class. In this case is user, and also we need to be precise on or call the method that we need to know more about. In this case, it will throw us two elements inside an array. The first element is a string, and it contains the whole path since the beginning until what version is the gem, what kind of what are the directories, and also the file. And the second, which is very cool, is an integer, is the line on the file where you can find that method. So with this, I think you are almost done. Then another method that I used in order to understand it like a high level, I'm sorry for the high level perspective of the gem is, again, calling the class, and this that includes modules. And we can see that it matches to what in the first line it says pay attribute customer extensions, I'm sorry. It matches to what the first method throw us. And then this is just a simplified version of the file. And on the, well, you don't see the file, but yes, it was on the 86th line. And well, that would be like, in order to get more about that method. And well, this is the last part. What is a Rails engine in this case is different than a gem file, and well, it is different because it enables us with more functionality, like internationalization. A simple example to think of it is like a mini Rails app that you can integrate into your normal Rails app. And the one that I think we most of us know is Device. Device is a Rails engine. These two paragraphs are taken from the Rails guide. This is where inside the page gem is the Rails engine. And then, well, main takeaways, there are the two different methods that we use, source location, also they include modules, and lastly, the Rails engine documentation. So I think that will be all, guys. Thank you.
I'm going to take this. Thanks. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Kayla Rose Mitchell. I'm a software developer primarily working in Ruby on Rails. And I'm excited to talk to you about data minimization and data privacy today. As software engineers, we have a responsibility to design and build systems that protect the privacy of individuals and their personal data. This means incorporating privacy considerations into every stage of the software development lifecycle, from design and planning all the way to maintenance. On January 1st of this year, the California Privacy Rights Act came into effect, providing greater privacy protections for California residents, such as data access requests, data deletion requests, and more, and other states are following suit. But how do you balance future business and consumer needs versus the benefits of deleting data? A potential answer to this question lies at the heart of privacy engineering, and that's the principle of data minimization. Data minimization is a principle of data protection that states that only the minimum amount of personal data necessary for a specific purpose should be collected, processed, and retained. It's an essential component of privacy by design and a key element of many data protection regulations, such as EU's GDPR and CCPA. Data minimization aims to reduce the risks associated with data processing by limiting the amount of personal data that organizations collect, store, and use. By collecting and processing only the data that is necessary for a specific purpose, organizations can reduce the potential for data breaches, unauthorized access, and misuse of personal data. This means that we should only collect and use the data that's necessary for a system to function, and no more. Data is being generated at an unprecedented rate. Yes, Kayla Rose, we know this. Oftentimes, this data translates to profits for companies, making them less inclined to limit what they collect. The profit generated from selling the excessive data we collect pales compared to the revenue that comes from building consumer trust and retention. When consumers trust products and services, and us, they experience greater freedom, more creativity, and they're empowered rather than just enabled to use technology. So let's embrace privacy engineering and create a world where privacy is respected and innovation thrives. Thank you.
All right, so hello everyone. I'll be doing a quick 5-minute presentation on secure passwords. So my name is Angela. I'm a software developer at ByteSite. It's a custom software agency, and I'm based out of Toronto, and I'm a scholar at RailsConf, and I'm super passionate about web security. And so last year, in August 2022, I received an email and multiple text messages from my bank. And that was because my bank account was locked and it was almost hacked, and I was incredibly sad, like this Pikachu. And so since then, I've changed and increased my password to 30+ characters long using a password manager, obviously. Not going to memorize all that. And I've also taken a greater interest in web security. And so I did some research and I found the top 10 most common passwords in 2023. If your password is on this list, I highly encourage you to change it like ASAP. And another thing I noticed about this list is that all the passwords are really short. It's 10 characters or less. And so this got me thinking, how can I help users have secure passwords on web apps that I currently work at my job? And so at my job, we work with Ruby on Rails and Devise. And with Devise password, I've noticed that the minimum character length is 6. And there's no requirements on uppercase, lowercase, numbers, or symbols. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is acceptable. So is QWERTY. You can write 1 6 times. And actually the word password is going above and beyond because it's 8 characters long. So kind of crazy. And so let's take a look at this chart. This is from Hive Systems, and this is the time it takes a hacker to brute force your password in 2022. So if you look at 8, which I feel like most applications, it's like the minimum characters is 8 with numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and letters and symbols, it takes 39 minutes for it to get your password hacked. Versus if you have 12 characters with numbers, uppercase, and lowercase, letters, and symbols, it takes 3,000 years just by increasing it to 12, which is crazy. And so I do have good news. Devise allows you to customize the minimum password length to increase it, above 6, which is great, which is what I did for one of the web apps that I worked on. And you can also scan this to find out more about the documentation. So here are the quick key takeaways. So enforcing strong password requirements will help users from getting their accounts hacked. And increasing it to 12+ characters, adding uppercase, lowercase, symbols, and numbers equals 3,000 years to crack. And here are some just sample passwords suggestions, like I love pizza, 1, 2, 3, unicorns with a $sign are cool, 4, 5, 6, exclamation, hashtag gems are amazing with a heart symbol. You can have all of these. This is like above 12 characters. And lastly, don't forget, you can always customize your password length using Devise. Thank you, and feel free to connect with me on social media.
Hi everyone, I'm Greta. I would like to talk to you today about how I went from being a professional cellist to a software engineer at GitHub. I'm aware many of you might be looking for jobs early in career, so I thought it might be a little interesting to talk about. When I mean professional cellist, I really meant professional cellist. I have a master's degree in cello performance, certificate in college teaching. I got to play video games live at Red Rocks. That was super fun. I got to play a Brahms symphony with the Colorado Symphony. So I've had a lot of fun in the cello world, but I kind of wanted something else. I wanted something different, something new, more puzzles. And yeah, I love puzzles. So I decided software engineering was the way to go. So how did I get there? That's a really hard thing to switch careers. First thing is making the decision to do it. And I think the first thing I learned is it's really important to be curious and to study a lot. And not just about necessarily what you want to get into. For instance, I was studying a lot in a coffee shop. I asked so many questions to the barista about the coffee that I got invited multiple times to work as a barista there. And I actually ended up taking that job for fun. So now I can draw latte art. Yay! Yay! It's super fun. Try it out sometime. So be curious, study lots. And then when you get an opportunity, don't sell yourself short. Know your value. My first job, I actually got, and it started like data entry, but I told them, actually, I'm not worth this much. I'm actually worth more. Here's my resume. Here's why you should take me for more. And they paid me more. And then when I took the initiative, because I'm passionate about what I do, I wrote a script to automate a bunch of what I was doing. When that person left who did the automation, I got her job. That was my first job in tech. Yay! And then when that job was starting to dry up a bit, follow your interests and your passions. That's my next really big lesson learned. I wasn't writing enough code, not as much as I wanted. So I decided to apply somewhere else. So don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to reach out and follow your passions and interests. My next job was as a data engineer at a genomics company. So I got to learn about an entirely new field. It was awesome, it was super fun. And I got to code a lot more. So I got to be a Python dev at that point in time. There's another really important lesson I learned, the next step. How did I end up at GitHub? Well, I got laid off at that data engineering job. So I think it's really important to realize you can't let negatives in your life get you down. Because if you do, you won't get anywhere. You'll just stop. So, you know, partially as a little joke, I'm like, oh, well, where do I really want to work? But they probably won't accept me, but I'll just do it anyway. Just believe in yourself. Apply. Believe in yourself. Do it. And so I did the tech interview. Passed that, yay. But then when I went into the interviews, it was so helpful to actually bring a little bit of confidence, a little bit of humor, and actually be really interested about my passions when I was talking to the interviewers, because honestly, you're just talking to fellow developers once you get to those things. And you have to realize that I've actually got to hold some interviews at my previous company, and that's really all it is. So keep that in mind, be confident in yourself, and be ready to sell yourself as you are. So, just to remind everyone, my lessons: be curious, always curious, study a lot, try hard, be passionate, believe in yourself, know your worth. And out of curiosity, how many people are looking for a job right now? Yes, how many people are earlier in career? You all got this, good luck, and feel free to reach out to me on social media or just in the hallways or whatever. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rock Davenport. I am honored to be a scholar in the 2023 RubyConf Scholar and Guides program. I also want to, thank you. I want to thank the board of directors and staff at Ruby Central for producing a high-level and inclusive event. I also like to thank all of you who have been very supportive of me and given me words of encouragement during my time here. Today I'm going to talk about resilience. As some of you may know, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, many moons ago. Thank you. And some of my earliest memories are of my mom wearing this shirt that said Frazier. Now, my mom would wear this shirt fairly often, and at some point in my life, I actually thought it was our family name. Turns out, it was a replica jersey of a guy named Walt Frazier. You might have heard of him. What I'm trying to tell you guys is that I was born a New York Knickerbocker fan. Anyone who knows anything about professional basketball, more specifically the New York Knicks, would know that they had a run during the 90s where they were a pretty good team. They spent a lot of years in the playoffs, but never actually made it to the championship, thanks to a guy by the name of Michael Jordan. You should also know that during the 2003-2004 season, the Knicks fell off a little bit and things weren't that great. And following that year, they went 6 straight years without making the playoffs at all. Then we received a guy by the name of Carmelo Anthony, who led us to the playoffs for 3 years in a row. Shortly after that, we went another 7 years without making the playoffs, to my dismay. It's safe to say that it hasn't been easy being a New York Knickerbocker fan. My beloved team has been the butt of jokes from late night comedians to your local cookout jester. Despite all of this, I remain true as a New York Knickerbocker fan, and anyone who's a Knickerbocker fan will let you know that that's their team. Even when Brooklyn came into town, there was no switching allegiances. But this has led me to a discovery, which was I was born with the ability to be very resilient. Some may say delusional, but I see my loyalty to the team as an unwavering characteristic that has really shaped me as a person. I've noticed throughout my life that the same resiliency will show up time and time again, whether it's a difficult medical diagnosis of a family member or a missing semicolon somewhere in code. I've stuck with it and addressed the challenges head on. It's that resiliency that I'm proud to bring along with me, along with other tools as a developer. It's that stick-to-itness, which will provide me with courage to try to attain for another solution, to dig a little deeper and to face unknown challenges, only to wake up and do it all over again the next day. I encourage you all, whenever that day comes and you're faced with a challenge, to dig deep inside and pull out your inner Knick fan. Thank you very much. I am Rock Davenport, a competent and available developer. Thank you. And I would love to discuss the challenges that your company faces with its code bases. Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about my hilarious adventure as a solo parent living around the world with 3 kids in tow. You heard that right, just me and my little entourage. And if you're wondering who is the oldest one, he's standing right next to me. Our long story started when one day my husband meets this Indian guy who convinces us to move to Bangalore to found a startup together. My response, sure, why not? Just quitting our jobs and uprooting our lives, easy peasy. So to prevent our jobs going to India, we went there first. We took the leap of faith and moved halfway across the world to live amongst the locals. Talk about the culture shock. But the fun didn't stop there. In order to save my autistic and brilliant 6-year-old from being thought to be normal by all the experts in my country, teachers and psychiatrists, we needed a way out. So our next stop was Thailand. 6-year-old Zoe, ever the prodigy, picks up Thai faster than you can say Pad Thai, and suddenly she's our personal translator and tour guide. Meanwhile, Ida is adopted by the local monastery thanks to their Buddhist babysitter. Now this little blonde girl is not only a local celebrity, but also a hot food enthusiast. Neighbors would knock on our door asking to borrow her and show her around town. Can you believe that? Onward to Singapore, where we meet a Chinese couple who become the kids' second set of parents. And we are absolutely loving it. The no-study science, the diverse cultures, and the tantalizing hookah centers. I mean, who wouldn't? But wait, there's more. Or next stop, Indonesia. We end up living in a very welcoming Muslim community. It's a cultural mashup that leaves us visiting family wide-eyed and speechless. There are just the highlights. Over the course of our travels, we visited 70 plus countries, lived through a military Thai coup, and even left 2 bombing sites just an hour before disaster struck. Talk about living on the edge. I've been taken aside for a friendly interrogation in Indonesia. Let's just call it a less than pleasant facility. And if you think the US border control is bad, imagine seeing a sign that shows a finger. Well, you get the picture. That will make you rethink your life choices. For 1.5 hours, we went back and forth with the officer, and I started to feel like I was in some twisted game show. But then it hit me. This guy just wanted some cash. So I handed over all my money, which was $700, and you know what? I walked out of there with my dignity intact. Well, mostly. Ain't it something? During the monsoon season in Bali, our wooden gates swelled shut, forcing us to channel our Indian lumberjacks with axes and machetes to escape our own home. And speaking of Bali, let's not forget the earthquakes and volcanic ash, stranding us at the airport for 2 days. So, what was the result of our globe-trotting adventures? Well, Zoe, the prodigy that she is, now speaks 7 languages. She passed her first AP art history test at the age of 12. With flying colors, she got a 5. And mind you, she started learning English just 2 years before that. And we never ever lived in an English-speaking country. At 13, she became a Korean English translator, working on webtoons and whatnot, and even started her own successful international business importing K-pop merchandise and spreading it across the globe. Ida, not far behind, speaks only 4 languages, but at 11, she got plenty of time to catch up with her older sister. She plays chess like a pro, and when she's not studying chess games and learning new moves or hangs out with her friends, she's knee-deep in developing her first 3D game in Unity. Their appreciation for life is truly amazing. Being exposed to all those cultures and languages has completely rewired their brains, turning them into superhumans we always knew they would be. So, what was the secret sauce to our lifestyle? It's simple. Get a remote job or win the lottery, either one works. Be independent and teach your kids independence. It's simply not possible to keep them in a bubble, to protect them, or do things for them all the time. Are they hungry? Teach them to cook. My kids have been preparing their food since they could reach the stove. Encourage your kids to take care of themselves and solve their issues. It will save your sanity. Let your kids fail, and fail again, and again, and again. There's nothing wrong with failing. It's how we learn. My kids have become seasoned experts in failure, but they know how to pick themselves up and keep moving forward. Be open-minded. As you wander the world, you meet all kinds of people, and that's it, you will never know them.
Hi everyone, my name is Kiwi. I work for a company called VersaPay. This is my first in-person RailsConf. Thank you. I've been to enough talks to know the buzzwords that make the crowd happy. Today I'll be talking to you about how to solve a Rubik's Cube. I don't know why, but I'm a really clumsy person and really silly. For some reason, I didn't imagine we would have the ability to, show a PowerPoint slide during the presentation. So for the people in the back, just imagine a Rubik's Cube really hard in your mind. It's a mental exercise. Or you can just move up front to see the actual cube. So part of my motivation for this, there's 2, for giving this talk is I was once awarded the most likely person to start a yo-yo fad at my job. I've started a couple. I've started a Go board game fad. And then a recent while ago, another coworker and I both got into cubing. So I like to think I'm pretty successful at what I do. So I encourage you to bring this trend back with you to wherever your company is. Now, it's very hard to teach you the full algorithms in 5 minutes. So I'm actually shortening this to actually just the first 2 layers of the cube. But first, I like to go over the anatomy of the cube. the different pieces that are on this cube and when they are considered to be solved. And then I'll go over what algorithm means when it comes to solving a cube, and also show you a very basic algorithm called the sexy move. And from there, I'll go over a very beginner's method to solving the first two layers, and I'd like you to take home the assignment with you to solve the third layer on your own. So to first start us off, this is a Rubik's Cube. It is actually a 3x3x3 cube, so there's actually three pieces across in height and in depth. But each face has a centerpiece, which is stationary, so that one's always solved. There are 4 pieces on the edges that are adjacent to 2 centerpieces. Those are solved when they are in the correct position, meaning they are next to the correct centerpiece, and then the colors are aligned properly. So for instance, this yellow piece here is yellow, and this edge piece is yellow and orange. And it is solved currently because it is next to the orange centerpiece and yellow centerpiece, and they're aligned properly. So the beginner's method, let's get into that later. But you also have corner pieces. Corner pieces has 3 colors. So they are considered solved when they are in the correct corner, meaning they are adjacent to all 3 faces of the correct color, and they are aligned properly. Now, I've told you about the 3 different types of pieces on the Rubik's Cube. I like to go over what an algorithm is. An algorithm is a set of sequence or rotations you apply to a cube to transform the state of it. So just basically move pieces around. They're helpful because most of the time you've already solved part of the cube. You don't want to disturb what you already completed. So in order to preserve the state, people go out, discover new algorithms that preserve part of the structure while moving around the unsolved pieces or rotating or permutating them. So that's what an algorithm is in cubing. A very simple algorithm, which consists of 4 rotations, is the sexy move. So it's like this. Sexy, I know. It's just very easy to pull off, and it's very satisfying to pull off, and it's used in a lot more complicated algorithms. So you can do the sexy move with both your right and left hands. It usually involves rotating the right face if you're doing it with your right hand, and then the top face, which is up. And then you would do right, up, and then right, and also up again. But the order in which you do it is you would do clockwise rotations on the first 2, and then counterclockwise rotations on the last 2. Your left hand sexy move would be flipped. But anyways, so that was algorithms. Now we're going to go into how to solve it. The beginner's method requires you to solve a cross. You can start with any face, but you want to solve a cross on one of the faces first, meaning align the edge pieces, all the edge pieces on that face, and solve them. Let's do yellow. So this one's already solved for me. So here's the yellow face, and then the edge piece, which is yellow and blue, is aligned correctly.
Jack Verbinner, and I'm about to bring down the mood. I pitched this talk to a few people when I learned that I was going to be doing a lightning talk, and all of them told me that it was probably a little too dark for this audience. I see somebody shaking his head who I talked to, and I was more motivated to do it. As such, I'm going to give a quick trigger warning. I am going to be talking about violence against vulnerable aspects of the society, and in general, if you're just tired of a cisgendered heterosexual white male talking to you about the fears that you've internalized your entire lives, I understand. I will give you time to go by talking quickly about a concept called historical determinism, just to kind of frame what I'm going to be talking about. Historical determinism is the belief that events in history are entirely determined or constrained by various prior forces and therefore, in a certain sense, inevitable. This is unacademic thinking. You cannot use history as a way to predict the future. You cannot use one event in history to predict a future event that occurred in history. What you can use things for is to frame history and to frame the present. But anything I'm going to say isn't about saying that the outcome is inevitable. It's about framing it, right? So for instance, the assassination, people like to say that the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the cause of World War I. It was not. There were a million factors that had to go on around that event to trigger that war. It was not cause and effect, it was just an event. So, with that in mind, I'm going to talk about a book by Ben Kiernan, who is the Professor Emeritus of History and the Professor or the Director of the Genocide Studies Program at Yale University. And in his seminal work on genocide, he called Blood and Soil, A World History of Genocide and Extermination from Sparta to Darfur, I highly recommend it. He identified 4 factors that were present in all of the societies in which genocide occurred. Now, genocide by the Yuen definition of genocide occurred. And I'm not going to spell anything out for you because you guys are a very smart group, but I'm just going to say what these 4 are, and you might notice some similarities with modern day. Those 4 factors are a cult of antiquity. This is a worship of a prior group that came before you. In the case of the Turks, it was during the Armenian genocide, it was the nomadic people that came before them that gave them power. For the Germans, it was the Aryans that gave them power that they could hearken back to and justify their actions and their superiority. And, it could be not past people, it could be, the, let's say, paternalistic progenitors of your country. The second is a fetish for agriculture. That is, in all of these societies in which genocide occurred, there was a majority group, whether it was an ethnic majority or a religious majority or what have you, who worked and lived mainly in rural areas doing farm work, and a minority group, whether it be racial, ethnic, or religious, who lived in the city. And the fetish part comes from the fact that these certain elements of society exalted the morality of those who were the religious majority and lived in the rural areas, and denigrated the morality of those who lived in inner city populations. Again, not gonna draw any conclusions for you. The third is ethnic enmity. No further comment. The fourth and the one that's most debatable, is imperial and territorial conquests. And there's a lot of war. And remember that in the modern day, due to geopolitics, it's very difficult for superpowers to actually outright annex territories. And so we do things in different ways. But the point is that it exalted violence. Now, these factors are not inevitable. It doesn't even tell us that these things are probable. That's historical determinism. What it does tell us is that the stakes are always high. Whether or not we are on the path to genocide, the stakes are always high, and we have to act in order to prevent. That is why things like anti-racist, anti-homophobic, anti-ableist, and anti-transphobic activism is so important. It is not enough to simply be inclusive. It is not enough to simply be diverse. It is not enough to create a safe space. Those are the bare minimums. Those are the baselines. That is what we should be doing as a matter of course, and everything after that is activism. If you are having trouble finding a diverse people coming out to get hired by you, ask yourself, what are you doing for those communities? What are you using the wealth that this industry creates to help those marginalized by society and to bring them to you? And that is my 5 minutes.
All right, that was some heavy topics. Let's get a little bit lighter. I'm really excited to go on this journey with y'all. Journey. What do I mean by that? So, hang on a second. There we go. We are, as engineers, all on a journey of continuous learning and development. For many of us, that's what actually drew us to this industry, the promise that we would always have something new and exciting to learn. But for somebody who's new to this industry, that can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming because there is a lot that you can and could and possibly should be learning. Now, when I hear the words journey, and I see long to-do lists, I start thinking about RPGs. And in RPGs, oops, one moment please, we break down that to-do list into 2 groups. We break them down into main quests and we break them down into side quests. So in main quests, you get to rescue attractive and single royalty. You get to slay dragons, but most importantly, you gain incredible new powers and abilities. Your side quests are gonna synergize with those abilities. So you are the Dragonborn, you've gone to see the Greybeards, you get Foos and Roe, but then it's these side quests that lead you to the DAW. It's the side quests that teach you all of the other shouts that give you new play styles and new things you can interact with. These side quests provide context and background. They teach you about the Ted Faro plague and how people lived inside Horizon Zero Dawn. We can take this exact same concept and apply it to your developer journey. So, main quests let you build cool things. Side quests are gonna help you build cool things faster or help you build something even cooler. Understanding. Let's take a look at this mess, and we're gonna try and sort this into main quests and side quests. So we're gonna sweep all these away, and then we're gonna bring them back in. And what we're gonna see here is some interesting separations. So RSpec, that's a main quest. You need to be able to test that your cool things work. Test-driven development is a process that you can use to do that, but you don't see it in your final code. You could get the final result with the same thing. Git here is a way that you can undo your mistakes and collaborate with others. But if you've got Git working in your CLI, in your developer tooling, then you don't actually need to use the Git CLI, right? Like, you don't need to learn Vim. When we look at things like React and Angular, when we see things like React and Angular here, if you've picked up one of these, the other one actually moves into the side quest category because you have a way to build an interactive framework. I've got C here in side quest because a lot of people are going to tell you, you need to learn C to really understand programming and to understand memory management. That understanding makes it a side quest. If you're doing Ruby performance though, it's going to move over into that main quest category. So I want you to think about what you know and what you want to do when you are building your personal list of what it is to be a main quest and a side quest. The reason why I'm talking about this today is because I became a senior developer who couldn't exit Vim. And I typed it 25 words per minute, but I knew how to build great products. I focused on those main quest items first. And that's what I want you to do too if you're a new engineer or if you are mentoring someone who's a new engineer. I want you to provide that guidance on their journey. Now, I now know Vim. Why is that? Because senior engineers in the audience, at a certain point, we go through a lot of these main quests and we start to feel stagnant. We want to learn new things. We want to pick up cool, interesting things. That's when these side quests can help you explore new play styles. They can synergize. They can teach you new things. You can find all sorts of interesting new ways to interact with your code and bring that life and freshness back into it. If you take away nothing from this talk, what I want you to hear is that you need to focus and be intentional with what it is that you're learning and what you are guiding others to learn. I want to thank you very much for your time. My name is Chell Coates. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube. I'm starting out things on Ruby Social and at Hackaderm. I'm still on GitHub and Twitter. I'm currently on maternity leave, so none of these are going to look active. You can go play One Dreamer, though. This is an amazing programming game where you can, oh, hang on. Sorry, I got a little distracted. So you can go play One Dreamer, and this is an amazing programming game that is beautiful, made me cry 3 times, and also it uses programming as a mechanic, which is gorgeous and awesome, and yeah, you should go play it, and I would recommend it to you even if I wasn't in it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
My name is Jonan. Nice to meet you all. I have slides. Are they showing? They're very carefully crafted. What I did is I loaded some websites about some interesting things that I thought were cool. Not counting me. Hold up. We're going to go right into it. This is where you can find me on the internet, though, if you're the kind of people who care about this sort of thing. So I'm going to talk to you about something of a dirty word in software recently, and that is decentralization. Who hears that and is like, that's blockchains, dirty blockchain, you're going to sell us NFTs. I know you, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what decentralization is fundamentally and what it means to be building a distributed or a federated or a decentralized system, right? So federation in the case of something like Mastodon is a little bit different in that there are many different servers. Anyone can run one and they all interoperate, right? You have distributed systems, which is a little bit looser definition where you don't necessarily have a server and a client in a single unit. You have distributed systems that run in a large cluster environment, something like a Kubernetes cluster or something can be described as distributed, right? And in that case, you have a primary node and you have many secondary nodes, and there's some election process to connect the next one, right? There's always a boss. A decentralized system does not have a boss at all. There is no server involved in this organization, right? So I want to talk about a couple of technologies, and then I'll tell you where I'm going with this whole thing, I promise. But WebRTC, has anyone used WebRTC? No? This is a way that it's a real-time communication protocol for the web, right? So you can use this with a JavaScript API to do things like live video chat and communicate directly from a browser. It's a way to offload traffic a little bit from the browser so that you can have peers talking to a server. And that means that they can talk to each other. There was a particular thing called stun, turn, and ice way back in the day when we were all doomsday about IPv4. Do you remember that? We were running out of IP addresses and the internet was definitely going to die next year. We found a solution to that. And that was to create these virtual networks where inside of the house we have pretend IP addresses and externally those are all mapped to ports, right? This is called a NAT. So there's a way to get around this that I've got up on the page here and you can look up later about ICE, or called ICE, stun, and turn. And the basic idea is that I am peer A and you are peer B, and we want to be internet friends. So we go out to a server, to a signaling server, and I ask the signaling server, who am I? So it's kind of like I'm going to one of these IP address services, but it's a little more complex than that because it'll give me back a port number. It will give me what you need, what peer B needs to find me and connect directly to me using WebRTC. So I hope you are kind of starting to see where I'm going with this, because we can then use things like a conflict-free replicated data type in these communications to resolve collisions automatically. So it's not necessary that we have a server at the center to decide how things work. When you are typing in a Google Doc, this is what you're using. I'm typing ABC and you're typing DEF, and they get sewn together just perfectly. And for certain things, it is exactly that. It's just sequential input, right? But even when you talk about like order of operations with mathematics, then you obviously have to care about which order things went through. So you can define various types for these things, and you can map them all and solve them with CRDTs. So then you can build things like Gun, which is a decentralized database and runs directly in your browser and connects peer-to-peer to others. And you can even go further than this because Gun is just a database. You have systems like SyncStore, which is also a decentralized database. And then you have systems like this one thing, and this is kind of a shameless plug, but there is a set of open source projects that this company maintains, where I just started working, that builds on top of all of those things to build a peer-to-peer mesh network, an application platform that will automatically sync all of these changes across a map of things. So my point in all of this is just to say that I hope you don't see decentralized as a dirty word any longer. There's actually some really cool and important tech being built in the space. If you want to hear me brag some more about this cool company that I just joined, I'm happy to meet you in the hallway. If not, carry on. It's been nice meeting you all.
Okay, so I'll start. My name is Naofumi Kagami. I'm a developer of Ruby on Rails. I love Ruby. I love Rails. I'm going to be talking about many-to-many relationships, and in particular, I want you to love join tables. So I'm trying to convince you that you should put more love on your join tables. So, okay, let's start. The product that I'm working on is kind of like an educational website, and we have a lot of teaching materials. And the teaching materials are organized into units. The units are organized into courses. And so you have a kind of hierarchy here. But the problem is, the catch is that the customer wanted to reuse their teaching materials. So for example, M2, material 2 is going to be included in units 1 and units 2. Unit 2 is going to be included in this course 1 and course 2. And so you have a kind of a many-to-many relationship where some elements have more than one parent. Well, we know how to do this in SQL. In relational databases. We have a course, we have a unit, and we have a material, and we join them together with join tables. But we don't really pay much attention to our join tables. We often name them like just a mash of names like course unit, and we don't have any extra fields except the ones that are referencing the course and the unit. So not much love here, but it works. So yeah. It works until like 1 month before you release, the customer is working on his UI and says, well, wouldn't it be a good idea if we had breadcrumbs? And that's where you get really good, in a spot. Because if you're on the M2 page, your breadcrumb could be C1, M2, or it could be C1 U2 M2, or it could be C2 U2 M2. You don't know which. There's no information in the database which tells you which of these breadcrumbs you want to show. I had a hack. I made an algorithm that guessed, and it's working actually pretty well, but I really hate it, and I'm planning to change it in the next few months. And this is the kind of scheme that I'm thinking about. So what we do here is we're separating the hierarchy from the content. A unit, which is a unit of teaching material, it's now separated into the hierarchy part on the top and the body, the actual content. So we're separating the hierarchy from the content, which is kind of fitting for Atlanta, where you have Martin Luther King. You don't judge a person by what their external appearance is, but you judge them by the content of their character. You separate these concepts. So this is a really nice way of thinking about things. It gives you a single inheritance hierarchy because the course and unit and material is only has many relationships, a one-to-many relationship. So you have deterministic breadcrumbs. And for the many-to-many part, if you look at the unit here, it's actually just a join table. It's joining the course and the unit body and a many-to-many relationships. So you maintain the many-to-many relationships, and you also have a nice hierarchy. So it's a really, really nice way of doing things. So I don't have much time on jumping to the conclusion. Don't use many-to-many inside a hierarchy. Separate the hierarchy from the content. And this is kind of like another topic, but just don't underestimate your join tables. Don't just mash them together. Small kids have a habit of growing really bigger than yourself, like your children. Give them space to grow. Be considerate of the names that you give to your children, things like that. And strive to understand that your join tables, what your join tables really are and the reason they have for being. And they are really just join tables, because if you look at the scheme that I just showed you, I said that the unit was barely, just a join table. But when you really think about this, the units are now placeholders. So you have a very nice hierarchy of units, courses, and materials, but these are just placeholders, and you're just placing the content into each of these placeholders, and you can place it many times, the same content in many times. And the thing is that placeholders is a concept that a layman can understand. My dad can understand placeholders. But if I try to explain join tables to my dad, he will get confused. Join tables are one of the most confusing things about database design, in my opinion. And really thinking about your join tables and making them easily understandable is kind of like a hallmark of a good database design, in my opinion. So that's my talk. I hope you love join tables. My name is Naofumi Kagami. You can find me at Naofumi. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm not going to let you use the gong. I promise.
So, hey everyone, my name is Samantha Holstein. This is my first lightning talk ever, so I am so excited to be here. Yeah. Hope you guys are having a fantastic RailsConf so far. So just a little bit about me first. I am a software developer at Scout APM, and on top of developing our APM product on Rails, I'm also an active developer on our new product called Telemetry Hub, which visualizes open telemetry data. So I'm going to be talking about a 5 to 50,000 foot view of open telemetry and show why you should implement tracing in your Rails app. So quick show of hands, who has heard of open telemetry? Yes, all right, so we have a few, but for those of you who have no idea who it is, I'm gonna give you a quick overview. So what is it? At a glance, OpenTelemetry is an observability standard. This vendor-neutral open-source observability framework standardizes in generating and capturing telemetry data from cloud-native software. So OpenTelemetry addresses the full range of observability signals from traces, metrics, and logs. And currently, traces are fully stable in Rails, and metrics and logs are not implemented yet, but they're coming soon. hopefully. The open source community is so active. It is actually the second most active in CNCF behind Kubernetes. So if you are really wanting to get into those metrics and logs, there are already workarounds for that. I know I did when I started, and I have some pretty cool hacks. But we're going to talk about traces first, now that we have this basic understanding of OpenTelemetry. So what are traces? Traces are the big picture of what happens when a request is made to an application. They are essential to understanding the full path that a request takes. So that full path is broken down into spans, which represent a unit of work or operation. I'm going to start showing you what you can do with traces first, just to give you an understanding of how powerful OpenTelemetry is. So looking at Telemetry Hub's interface right here, this is a trace that is running a request to our data lake called Gemini, and it's broken up into each span of that request, as you can see right here, and lists out a bunch of helpful pieces of data for each span. So as you can see, the span right here at the top is containing information about a run command, and it's showing the specific user, the actual run command out there, the status code of the query as well. So you're like, well, now I can see kind of what it can do. How do I actually set it up? And it's so easy to start gathering tracing with auto instrumentation in OpenTelemetry, and it gives you a lot of data to play with. So for this specific example, all we had to do was add just a couple of gems, 3 right here, and just this small block of code. That was it. Obviously, this is very generic, saying your service name. You would just change that there. But that's it. Oops. So, for this specific example that we're going back to, auto instrumentation only consists of the status code. Well, you're like, Samantha, why would I just want to see the status code? Well, you can get a lot more information here that is set up with your auto instrumentation, like the status message, the library name, the language name, just to name a few, right here in that box on the side of one of Telemetry Hub's beautiful tables here. But custom instrumentation can also give you endless possibilities of what you might want to monitor in your app. As you can see in this little box right here, we have like our user, our different commands, and the area of the data lake of which we're searching, just to list a few up there. So now that I gave you a small sneak peek of just how powerful tracing can be, here's the why. OpenTelemetry is exploratory. This means you're able to pick up on trends, bottlenecks, and issues within your infrastructure before fires can happen. You heard me right. There are possibilities to find and fix problems preemptively instead of having those dreaded post-mortem meetings that I know we all love in here. So with OpenTelemetry, you can dive into similar spans that might be of use, might be of issue. You can filter by specific attributes of where you might want to find trends in your code, slice and dice what you want to see, maybe using a visualizations tool like Telemetry Hub, and really get to know your entire infrastructure instead of just one section of it. Thank you.
I have a timer.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Max. Is this loud enough? It's actually Max Speed. My dad's name was Rush. This is my second RailsConf. I work on a nonprofit called Hack Club, and I think Ruby on Rails is awesome, but instead of talking about cool things you can do with it, I'm going to talk about something that my team built using Ruby on Rails called Hack Club Bank. So this is a set of photos from a high school-led hackathon that ran in Boston last month. The hackathon was called Beantown Bash, and the theme was beans. And I'll leave the projects as an exercise in your imagination. But it was organized by a team of just 5 high schoolers. They fundraised, they found a space to actually run their hackathon in, and they got 100 other high schoolers from various high schools in the area to their event. And they organized this using a financial platform we built, Hack Club Bank. You can see the screenshot right there. And it's basically a place where high schoolers can store their money and build nonprofit projects instead of storing it with a parent and having that money get used on six-packs and some scratch-off cards. So here's the thing about Hack Club Bank. We're not actually a bank. We really don't want to be touching money directly. We're a Rails app that is a front end on top of an actual FDIC insured bank. They store all the money. They're based in Silicon Valley. And then we regularly sync all the data from this bank account into Hack Club Bank. All that transaction data shows up in what we call the ledger. And then we map each of those transactions to each of the individual hackathons or nonprofits running on our platform. Those are called subledgers. Now, this model works, or it worked for the first year or so, but we found there was a problem. Time. Specifically, money takes time to move. So for example, let's say I'm a high schooler, I get a $10 donation, I send a $10 check. And then a couple of days later, that check gets deposited and the money gets removed from my account. Pretty straightforward, it works. Let's break that model with an edge case. I spend $3 on my debit card before the check deposits. I don't know if anyone's done this before, but yep, your check will bounce. And whoever you're trying to pay for your venue for your hackathon is not going to be very happy. So the ledger tracks all the transactions that have happened. Are there any accountants in the audience? No, cool. If anyone's heard the word cash-based accounting, this is what's going on. But we needed a separate system. And so we built out the pending ledger. And the way that works is it tracks all the things that we think might happen in the future. And then we just map that into our balance sheet. So there's no accountant still, but this is called accrual-based accounting. Now, the pending ledger itself is not based on reality. There's not a real physical bank account, so we're very defensive and careful with this. It has human review regularly. It gracefully fails anytime our app gets confused or is like, I'm not 100% sure what's going on. It'll raise it with a human. And it's got a lot of graceful fallback. Now, the ledger itself, very secure, runs on top of an FDIC insured bank. In Silicon Valley, we sync with Plaid twice daily. And again, it's cash-based accounting. So, normally my talk was actually going to be about how Hack Club Bank runs all this stuff and reconciles, but due to certain events, I think last month or so, the ledger itself was about to not work. For anyone who is not in the know, Silicon Valley Bank just collapsed. And this is kind of the story of how we prevented Hack Club Bank from going down. That said, that will have to be continued because I am out of time and I see that gong coming up. So what I will say is if you're interested in Ruby and Rails nonprofits, just SSH into jobs.hackclub.com. If you want the rest of the story, find me at the conference and I'm happy to tell it.
Let's get a show of hands of how many of you guys are Rails developers. Yeah, cool. Good to know that I'm at the right conference. So I'll be giving you guys a crash course on how to crash Ruby. My name is Gary too, and I am a developer at Hack Club, which is where Max is as well. And I'm currently a senior studying computer science. I'm graduating in June, and yep, that's me. So now, somewhat of a tangent, but who's heard of the sandwich, soup, and salad theory? This is the idea that any food can be classified as a sandwich, soup, or salad. And this is relevant because of inheritance. So if we take a look at the slide here, we can see that a sandwich or a hot dog inherits from a sandwich, which may be a controversial opinion, but we'll forget about that. But what I'm trying to highlight here is the super keyword. In Ruby, if you call super, that'll call your parent class's method. And this is pretty handy. It's a core concept of object-oriented programming. So we can see here that if we do hotdog.new.say, we get, hey, it's hot dog, I'm a sandwich. Now let's take a look at how this works. So this is going to be C code because we're looking at the back end of Ruby. But the general gist of it is this highlighted section. We can see that it gets the current class of the method. So for example, when we were looking at hot dog, it'll get the hot dog class. And then it'll get the ID of the method. So for example, I think it was, let's see, say. Say was the name of the method. And then what we do next is that we take the parent of the current class, which is that first line, and we try to find that method ID in the parent class. Now, does anyone see an issue with this code? Does anyone know what the parent of basic object is? Yeah, the parent of basic object is nil. Basic object lives at the top of the inheritance tree. In other words, it has no parent. So when we try getting the parent of basic object, which is that first line, we get null. So this is what happens. If we take basic object, we define a method called segfault. It can be anything. And we try to see if super is defined, which is what this code here is doing, we get a segfault in Ruby. Now, this was something that I was very shocked by. And I went to the Shopify office hours, and turns out this indeed is a bug. So the patch here is to just simply check whether a class is null or not. If it's null, we return false. So as of 4 hours ago, that was my first contribution to Ruby. And that also means that as of 4 hours ago, I did not have a lightning talk. But yeah, so my name's Gary too. If you guys have any questions or if you're hiring, feel free to contact me.
Okay, folks, listen up because this is going to be the most important talk you'll hear all day. Now, Ruby is fantastic, but let's be honest, Rails is a little old. It's been around for over 19 years, which is actually almost older than I am. Quick show of hands, is anybody younger than 19? Nobody? Okay, the stats speak for themselves. The kids these days, they don't want to use Rails. They want to use hip, poggers-based frameworks like Remix, Next.js, yeah. And this is a problem. Now, before I get escorted off the stage, I do want to say Rails has aged fantastically. It's a great framework. I love working with it every day. But as the Ruby community, it's our job to make sure that Rails stays relevant with the kids of today. So today, I have a solution to this problem. Really quickly, I'm Caleb. I work at Hack Club Bank, which you just heard about. I'm an introverted musician, and I built Uno for Slack, so you know you can trust me. Now, I've spent countless nights pondering this problem. How do we make Rails popular with the kids of today? And after hours of pondering, I believe I found the solution. It was staring me in the face this whole time. Emojis. Kids love emojis. They use them all the time. And as it turns out, Ruby supports emojis in method names. This is valid Ruby. I actually ran it in my terminal, if you don't believe me, and this actually works. Is it just me, or are things about to get lit? Now, this is a pretty standard roots.rb file. It's a little weird. I know resources exists, but the worst thing is it's so last year. Where's the visualness? Well, Ruby lets you arbitrarily mess with classes at runtime, right? So, with a few well-placed aliases in a core Rails class in an initializer, you can actually create emoji methods that you can use in your routes.rb to turn that into this. Now, we're well on our way to a cooler, more hip Rails. You can also see I've renamed my views to emojis, and it just works out of the box. Now, this is just the beginning. You can use emojis everywhere. You can use them in models, controllers, and even configuration with all of these concepts I just showed you. The future is bright and full of emojis, and I know that with the power of emojis, we can make sure that Rails stays popular into the future. If you'd like to talk about building wacky creative projects or just like to scold me for my sense of humor, I'm Caleb Denio on Slack. You can find me after, and I'd love to talk. Thank you.
So hi everyone, I'm Obi.
I'm Peter.
Peter and I have been working together for almost the last 2 years at a company called Record Shop, but don't worry about that. I have something much more interesting to show you today. I made some slides, but basically this product called Magma Chat, I just open sourced it, flipped from private to public a little while ago. The reason for its existence is that I've been really interested in OpenAI's APIs and AI in general. And as you know, if you've also been looking into that stuff, it's a world populated by Pythons. And as a hardcore Rubyist that's been doing it for close to 20 years, Python kind of disgusts me. I'm sorry to any Pythonistas in the audience or whatever, but like if I'm working on code, I want to work in Ruby. So a couple of weeks ago, I was like, you know what? Ruby needs a ChatGPT clone, and I started working on that and very quickly got a ChatGPT clone working. And I decided that there's actually more cool stuff you could do, and I was able to do that rather quickly, and it became kind of interesting. So the platform itself leverages Rails 7, Stimulus Reflex, Cable Ready, and Tailwind. That's kind of like the base technology that's used to implement it. It uses OpenAI's APIs behind the scenes. And it features persistent humanized bot profiles, which means that the bots that you're talking to are you know, they stick around, they're not transient, kind of the way the conversations on ChatGPT are. They develop a personality because they have memory that's backed by a vectorized store. Also, you don't run out of context space because it has a rolling context window, so you'll never run out of conversation space. There's a lot of cool things about it, way more than I can talk about in a 5-minute talk. But one of the most interesting parts that I think is probably a first for a 0.1 product is that it has full internationalization. Because once you start programming with GPT, you realize that you can do a lot of stuff that was literally never possible to do before. So I'm going to flip through some of these screens. You can play with this yourself by downloading it. But I want to show you the cool internationalization feature, which is, here's your settings screen. I only have one setting right now, which is what language you want to choose. If you put in Spanish, of course, you're going to get your instrucciones en español. But you can also put in Mandarin if you want, and it's going to pull up Mandarin. You can even choose silly languages like Cockney rhyming slang. Mitch from Cookpad owes me drinks all day because he bet me that this was not going to work when I was giving him a demo. You can even put in Klingon. That's going to work. Sindarin will also work. Quenya will also work. If I put in emoji, it would work as well. It'll render display an emoji. And the way that I implemented that was like basically 4 or 5 lines of a helper method that just delegates to GPT for producing the translation. There's no traditional I18N involved in this sort of thing. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and everything is about to change. If you don't believe me, then you're going to get left out. So like there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pike, and this is your chance as a Rubyist to play with it. So hit that QR code that I have up on the screen, or look at magmachat.ai, and you'll find a link to the GitHub repository. I have a really exciting roadmap of stuff that we're going to add. We're looking for contributors, but basically right now the chat is one-on-one, but we want to do group chats, bot-to-bot communication, tools for integrating with the outside world like Slack and email and so on, autonomous agents, etc., speech to text. The list kind of goes on and on, but I think we can actually, with the power of Rails, make this the premier platform for experimenting with this kind of technology. And if I still have a minute left, I'm just going to give you kind of just a demo of what it looks like. So if I start a new chat with, let's say, my personal coach, I'm in debug mode, so it's showing you kind of like some of the prompting that goes on behind the scenes. As an admin, I can turn that off with / commands. And assuming that the internet's fast enough to say, how are you doing today? What's on your mind? And I'm going to say, just thinking about my girlfriend, perhaps. And it's non-deterministic, right? So I don't know what it's going to say, but I've talked to Tony about my girlfriend before, so he might say something. Thank you very much.
So I spent, well, I guess an hour today getting mRuby running in an Arduino Uno. Well, I started on my flight back, but finally an hour ago I got it working. So mRuby is a small version of Ruby. It's meant to run in more constrained environments like embedded devices. It has, it's also meant to be like embedded into other applications like Lua is. It has implementations that work on devices like the ESP line from Expressive, a device meant to run Ruby called NZ, and many more. Those devices range from having about 32 kilobytes of RAM to like 520 kilobytes and even up to like a megabyte. And so in embedded, that's a bit more than it is on like your personal computer. So the Arduino Uno is popular with hobbyists. It's like very simple C interface, means many people get into it, like learning how to blink LEDs and move servos and things like that. It has 32 kilobytes of program space, which is the space that your C code gets uploaded, compiled into. You have 1 kilobyte of EEPROM, which is persistent storage that remains after the device is turned on and off. And has 1 kilobyte of, oh, actually, I already just said that. And 2 kilobytes of RAM. So 2 kilobytes is tiny. That's like a page of that's like 1 page of a book, or 12 milliseconds of CD audio and stereo. So the mRuby VM, the official implementation of it, is not going to fit on an Arduino Uno, but there's a way. So this is based on something called mRuby/C, which is an even smaller implementation of mRuby. It has 40 kilobytes minimum RAM, and it has what's called a hardware abstraction layer for multiple different devices, but it's still too big. So I'll start with explaining what a hardware abstraction layer is. So it's basically an agnostic API that provides different functions for whatever the bare metal software running on a device needs. It's like a glue API that provides basic functions for like displaying, like talking to hardware. The thing about a HAL is that no matter what the interface is, the underlying code that talks to the device can change based on what device it's running on. The API that it provides stays the same. And in the case of the HAL for mRuby on the Arduino Uno, the Arduino library provides everything I need. I just need to print, like write a string and delay for some milliseconds. The Arduino standard library has all of that built in. So I didn't have to worry about implementing those on my own and taking up more of the 32 kilobytes of program space that I had. So Ruby, as you know, is object-oriented, and a object has to be stored as a C struct, is written in C. And a traditional C object for like Ruby, it might have like a bunch of metadata and stuff. I'm going just bare. It is a tagged union with 1 byte for the type of object that it is. And then because the Arduino's bus width is 14 bits, which means that it takes 14 bits to address a single location in the memory of the Arduino, that runs up to 16 bits. You can't have a 14-bit value in C, which means that you have 2 bytes for all the pointers within that tagged union. So this tagged union takes up 3 bytes in total, and that represents a Ruby object. So the memory management with this setup was very trivial because most of it's allocated in very large blocks at the very beginning of the initialization process, which means that fragmentation that happens like during the runtime of an application doesn't happen here. It's all right at the beginning. So the chunks of memory that are allocated are just one after another and no little space between. That means that we're wasting as little memory as possible. Then also there's no garbage collector because garbage collection was a bit overkill, it would take too much time. And instead I just opted for reference counting because that's just the easy way out. Sadly, that means you can have cyclical data structures, but you don't need those. So getting it onto the Arduino is a process of compiling the Ruby script to bytecode using the mRuby compiler. That generated MRB file, which is the mRuby bytecode, is then translated into a C header, which goes into like a const array. And then that also contains the symbols that it needs and everything else to resolve everything including the program itself. That generated header is then included within the Arduino sketch, and then the mruby VM initializes with the header that was provided, and that code just starts executing. So here is a very trivial script that blinks an LED, written in Ruby. I don't have the Arduino with me, but if I did, I would show it. This blinks an LED, and this is all you need to blink on an LED, blink an LED with an Arduino and Ruby. So that's it. Thank you.
Hi, is this on? Yes. I'm Joshua Payne. Thank you so much, everybody that's still here. There's fewer of you than there were at the beginning of the lightning talk, so I'm gonna need like extra enthusiastic participation. I want to tell you, thank you. I want to tell you about, but not too long participation, because this is really like right at 5 minutes. I want to tell you about my gem. It's called Active Record Summarize. It's for dashboards and reports. It is an almost invisible active record API that lets you combine many count and sum queries into a single fast query. I'm not going to read the rest of the presentation, don't worry. Have you ever faced this terrible decision? You're trying to write some reporting queries. You would love to reuse all of the nice scopes and the active record DSL, but it would involve then writing 5 or 10 queries, and it's going to be really slow, so you have to write this big blob of raw SQL. Why not have both reusability and performance? I wrote a gem for this. So for example, imagine this code in your controller. We've got some purchases that we're listing, and some of them had a promotion attached to them and some didn't. So we want to count the number of promotion sales and the revenue from promotion sales, and we'd also like to know how many sales did we have by region, regardless of whether they were promotions or not. You know, with Active Record, every time we call count or sum, that's like a terminal query. It's going to run that query right away and give us the answer back. Boy, wouldn't it be amazing if we could run all of that at once without having to change the code at all? Inconceivable. So with Summarize, it's practically the same thing, but you just run those queries inside of a Summarize block. How does that work? At the end of this, all of those queries are going to be run together in one magic query that answers all of the things and gives you all the same answers. In the Summarize block, time is suspended. The queries are not run. We are just keeping track of them, what sorts of things you're asking for. And Summarize builds one fairly complicated query and that runs it and then collects the data back into the shape that you expected it in those variables. Why did we do this? I work on track 1099. This is a very, very simple version of the dashboard. This is my actual dashboard as a user of the product. I have my own LLC, and it has, you know, I had to send one 1099, so there wasn't much to do here. But you can imagine many companies in that list where it says Letterbach LLC, and you can imagine many different forms of different types with different IRS status, with different e-delivery status, and just think about what queries you might have to write to make this happen. So we actually did this all very manually with like code that goes on forever. And then I found myself having to do it again in another part of the app. So I really thought there might be some way to do this automatically. I wrote a very bad library that did prove that it worked. And later I extracted Summarize from that. And so this is what this dashboard might look like in Summarize. So we've got forms. They join payers letter block LLC in this case. We're going to check that the access controls, make sure we're only looking at the stuff for this tax year. Group by payer name and ID, and then Summarize. Now, last time I was using instance variables. Now I'm just returning a hash instead. So grouping by form type and counting, grouping by IRS status and counting, grouping by e-delivery status, and so on. And the bit at the bottom is what that would look like. We'll just assume that the statuses are Postgres enums, okay? So, give you a second to let that sink in. So that is basically what Active Record Summarize does. There's a bunch more. So your to-dos, your takeaways from this event are bundle add Active Record Summarize, and go star the repo, please. I've got 104 stars. Only 3 of them are me, so I legitimately have more than 100. And I'm Midnight Monster on every platform that I'm on, because I don't know, I made that up when I was 20 and it sounded cool. There you go. And the QR code goes straight to the GitHub page. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi, my name is Eric Sape. It's okay if you mispronounce my last name. You won't be the first, you won't be the last. So my mom teaches 3rd grade, and so she always has to explain to her kids how to pronounce her last name. So I'm just gonna do that here. She teaches them that it's like saw and pay, like you saw something and you pay for something. Anyway, so you can just call me Eric too, that's a lot easier. So anyway, my wife has always had a desire to help foster children and to become foster parents. Foster care, for those that don't know, is a temporary living situation for kids whose parents cannot take care of them and whose needs for care has come to the attention of child welfare agency staff. We went through the training, and I'm proud to say that we are licensed foster parents and accept foster children into our home when possible. The training to become a foster family is hard. The children that are placed into foster care often come with developmental issues, trauma, or experience with abuse or neglect. On top of that, they are taken from their homes and disrupted from their normal routines to be placed in a new family. It's important that they're placed in a stable, caring foster family while their family works through the issues that required their children to be placed in foster care. Now, after our licensing was complete, we waited for phone calls to take in children. Unfortunately, the calls were for children that we weren't trained for or weren't able to support, and I really wondered why we were getting such weird calls that we weren't able to take care of. So I called up our licensing trainer to ask how their process worked and to see what was going on. So he told me that the way that they currently find families, and I was pretty shocked. Basically, every day a group of workers hop on a Zoom call. As children come in, they open up an Excel spreadsheet, and that has a list of families, and they start calling. The cells contain some family contact information and then one cell for notes. Most of the time, the workers are the ones who have the best information just in their brain about what the family's current status and availability is. As they call the families, they'll make a note on what they said, and after a few notes of saying no, you start to get overlooked because they're hoping to find families that will say yes. This is what happened to us. We said no a few times for various reasons. Either the children had issues that we weren't trained to handle, or we just weren't available. Like sometimes we were just out of town, and so we weren't able to do it. So I, like many of you, really love a good side project. So I told him that if he was willing to work with me, that I would be willing to volunteer to make a tool for them to make finding families for these children easier. So he agreed, and I set out in my spare time to try and make something. My bar was to be better than Excel spreadsheet, so hopefully that wasn't too hard. And I'm happy to say that I created this thing called True Harbor. So working closely with them, I developed this app, and it helps foster agencies manage their list of trained and available families. It helps place children with the best possible family. It's searchable, which wasn't really available in the last one. It gives a score to each family to see how well they will fit and are compatible with the child. And it gives helpful statistics for administrators. I'm really proud to say that True Harbor has become their day-to-day tool in finding families, and over 500 children have been placed using the tool this year. I'm also happy to say that we are receiving more phone calls now because of the app, so that's been really great for us. I wanted to tell this story to highlight the ability we have to help groups and organizations that may not have the means to custom software. Developing software for nonprofit organizations can be a fulfilling experience that not only benefits the organization, but also allows you to give back to your community. As software engineers, we have a unique set of skills that can be used to make a difference in the lives of others. While it can be easy to get caught up in our day-to-day work, it's important to take a step back and think about how we can use our skills to help those around us. Nonprofit organizations often have limited resources, both in terms of funding and personnel. This can make it difficult for them to invest in custom software, even if it could greatly benefit their mission. By volunteering our time and expertise, we can help these organizations achieve their goals and make a real impact. So I encourage you to seek out nonprofit organizations in your community and offer your services. It could be something as simple as setting up a website or as complex as building a custom tool like True Harbor. You may be surprised at the impact you can have and the connections you can make. That's it. Let's use our skills to go make a positive impact in the world, one line of code at a time. You can find me on the internet anywhere as Eric Sape, also on Mastodon. So that's it. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going? Today I want to talk to you about flame graphs. Here's some quality ASCII art here. So what are flame graphs? Oh, that's the wrong button. All right, so I looked online, a few things, like it could be visualizing profiled code, it could be graph data from hierarchical data. Their visualization of hierarchical data is the theme. It's stack traces, but the way I think of it, it's a powerful tool for understanding how your program runs, and it's a great tool to have in your tool belt. Hi, I'm Josh Nichols. I go by Technical Pickles. I can appreciate making up a name 20 years ago. So this is my fourth RailsConf. My first was in Las Vegas, 2009-ish, and it's so awesome to still be here and see such a vibrant community. I work at Gusto. I like ASCII art, and I like Vim a lot, but I've had a lot of time for side quests. So, and I'm also easily nerd sniped. So let's look at an example program. So here's a simple RB. So we got a hello world, it's a sup. Okay, so hello calls world, world calls it's a, and then these are just spending some time sleeping. So you run it, you see those methods print out. So what if we wanted to profile it? Imagine, and I forgot to actually show a picture of what a flame graph is. So this is a flame graph. These are the stacks that we were talking about. So if you see this and you want to like try to imagine what it would look like or implement ourselves. So here's at the top you see main, and that's the whole time is spent in main. Then you have a hello there, and hello calls world, and world calls itza. So the one thing on top calls the thing on the below it, and so on. We have one way we can start experimenting with this. It's called caller. It's a method that returns a stack trace at the current time with the line or the file, the line number, and the method being called. So let's add that to the log output. So here in the main, you can see it just has the line number and main. When you get to hello, we say, you see it's still in main, and you see it's calling hello, and so on. So world has main, hello, world, and so on. What if I were to take these and kind of line them up horizontally? It's a little smaller. That starting to kind of look like the shape of the flame graphs. All right, so now let's look at a real one. I mentioned this one. Here's another one. This one is, I don't know why, but they're from the top down, even though fires burn up, not down. So to make this a lot easier, I built a gem called Singed. It's built on several libraries that are part of it. One is StackProf, RBSpy. These are the things that are actually profiling the code. And SpeedScope is what we're going to visualize it in. So let's try running it. So you run the command. You see you need root for this for RBSpy. It's going to run some code, and then eventually it's going to write a file and then open it in your browser. So this looks pretty similar to what we were talking about. You got the main at the top. Main calls hello, hello calls world, world calls itza. So we got a good idea of what it's actually doing. One way I like to think about code is like documentation lies, code is truth. But code is also can be a lie because it's just a representation of what we think should happen. Whereas looking at this flame graph, this is actually what's happening. I think I mentioned that about this. So, okay. And I mentioned how it actually works. So if you look at a frame, it calls the one right below it. If you see stuff like there's nothing right below it, that means the time is spent in that and only that method. So if you don't see anything below the sleep, there's nothing else. It's in sleep. And let's look at this in Rails because that's a silly program. So I made a single file Rails app, which you can do. Just has a single route, has a index, and we try to run it. With Singe, you can make it easy to profile individual things, and we get this, which looks kind of weird because we just keep scrolling and scrolling. Where's the controller? It's right down here. It's the last line of code. We talked about in Eileen's talk, like Rails hides the complexity and it takes on the complexity. Well, this is the complexity. So I'm going to skip over, but you can. I found this a super powerful tool. You can use it to profile like basically anything. It gives you a chance to be curious, learn by doing. This is hard to teach, I found, so it's definitely helpful to just try it out or pair it with someone. Here's my social. Talk to me about. flame graphs.
Hi, everyone. I have to stick with this script exactly. Thank you for coming to the lightning talks, and thank you for letting me participate. My name is Amanda Lundberg, and I am your live real-time captioner for RailsConf. So, thank you. How do I do captioning? Hint, it's not AI. Before I go too far, I want to thank Myra for helping caption this talk. Please give a round of applause. Now, a little bit about me. I trained as a court reporter from 2009 to 2012. I was hired by a big TV captioning company right out of school, and I captioned Good Morning America, the Sochi Olympics. The prime time was only available to the top captioners, and I'm proud to say I was on prime time. I captioned half of the 2014 World Cup, 32 of 64 games. I went on vacation for the last bit. I've also captioned the Rose Bowl and all sorts of acronym sports, MLB, NHL, NFL, you get it. And after TV, I moved to freelancing and captioned tech conferences, hi. And also captioned interesting things like a grazing conference, yes, about cows and stuff, and a conference about how maple syrup is made. I also captioned medical and vet schools, nursing school, which is tougher than med school, in my opinion, and anything, funerals, weddings. I'll caption anything because accessibility is important. I don't turn down jobs based on content because my job is to help people, and I love that about it. I am now an employee of White Coat Captioning, and I'm doing all these things and loving it. I am also court reporter number 567 in New Mexico. Yippee! All right, I am using a steno keyboard to caption. Feel free to stop by and check one out. I'm over with the sound guy. Everyone wave to Sean. The steno keyboard is made up of a bunch of keys that you can press at the same time. It's chorded, like playing a piano. I can write letters individually, but that requires a command alongside the letter to make it lowercase or uppercase. I can write the entire alphabet on the left-hand side of the keyboard, and with my thumbs, those are the vowels. Some words are easy. Cat is K-A-T. Makes sense? Fish is T-P-E-U-R-B. That makes sense. If you're a stenographer, T-P is an F, E-U is an I, and R-B is a sh sound. Get it? I write a lot of words in 2 strokes. For example, summer. I would write it in 2 strokes unless I remembered that I can tuck the R, this hand, because I program a dictionary around that. I can also use brief forms for longer words. One of the first great ones I learned was for infrastructure. TPRAS, or FRAS in my head. Perspective, I made SPEBGT. BG is a K, because I was tired of writing in 3 strokes. I can also write phrases in 1 stroke, so I encourage all speakers to use at the same time, or on the other hand, a lot, because I can write all those words with 1 chord on my keyboard. Thank you for your consideration. The way I write RailsConf is a brief RO*PBG, or RONC, if I were to pronounce it out loud. All of this makes perfect sense, I know. If you ever want to make more sense of it, check out the White Coat Captioning TikTok. It's run by Vanessa at Haunty. And you should also check out her TikTok because she's pretty amazing. Here's an example of a big word that seems impossible.
All right, so I'm going to talk about 2 of my favorite languages, Rust and Ruby. And Rust is already in Ruby. I mean, Bygit is like a just-in-time compiler that's already made it to Ruby. It's a part of the main code base. And Bundler just added support for creating, Ruby gems with Rust in it. Why Rust? I mean, Rust is, I think it's like has the expressiveness of Ruby with the performance of C++. These are the list of features that I like about Rust in the order that I like them. Enums. I think once I started working with Rust enums, I couldn't work. I mean, I found that I was constrained everywhere else. It's a bit like Haskell's data classes. It's not like enums in other languages, and it's super amazing to work with them. And then Lisp has support for, Rust has support for macros, right? The moment I heard macros, like Lisp. Okay, so Rust has support for macros, both the hygienic kind in scheme, as well as the whole token stream parsing, and you can just send out another token stream. It's awesome. It has ownership and borrowing. Initially, I hated ownership and borrowing, right? You had to fight the compiler. You have to say, because Rust doesn't have a garbage collector. You have to tell them like when something goes free, and you have to be very explicit about it, right? And after a while, I started liking it. And then there's async await support. That's similar to what like Node.js has and things like that. So you don't have to block on your thread. So it's extremely performant on IO workloads. And then the ecosystem is amazing. You have crates like Serde and Tokyo and things like that, which are awesome, right? Which lets you serialize, deserialize structs, or have entire like async IO. And this is like a completely functioning web application in Rust, which performs way faster. So it uses Axum, it uses Tokyo, and you see this weird syntax over here that actually, converts it into a macro and all that. We're going to talk about Magnus. So Magnus is a Rust crate that lets you write high-level Ruby exposed Rust code. So if you want to define a method in Rust and then just expose it to Ruby, you could do that. If you want to expose a class and then do that. So I initially prepared this for a longer talk, so I'm trying to compress this. So I'm going to get into Super Saiyan mode. I have a few videos that I wanted to talk about and just show that. So here, we're going to create a new gem with Rust in the extension, and I'm just going to edit the gem spec file here just to make sure that it doesn't complain about compiling and all that. And I'm going to do bundle exec rake compile, and this compiles the whole thing out, and it's ready to go. And then I do a bundle exec IRB, require the gem, and I say new gem.hello, and then it gives you RailsConf. I wasn't able to speak as fast as I was able to type, I suppose. Right? So I'm just going to skip this. So this is what works. So inside the lib.rs file that you can find in the gem, you have Magnus, you have a simple function called hello that's written in Rust, and in the init method, you basically expose it to the world. It's actually pretty high level, it's pretty nice. You can write performant code and have that exposed to Ruby. Now let's try writing a whole class called greeter and do that. As good citizens, we're going to write the test first and make sure that it fails for the right reasons. And then we're going to write the struct, write an initializer, write the method in there, and then now expose it to the Ruby world. We're going to create a class under a module. We're going to define these methods in there, and then we're just going to, fix a small bug in the spec that I missed, and then we're going to run our spec and see that it passes. So I just wanted to show that it's really easy to expose, Rust code to Ruby. I hope you all do it. We have a few books still left in the booth down below. We'd like to give off. I'd really not want to take it all the way back to Canada. So yeah, come meet us there, and then we'll be happy to chat with you and give you the books. Thank you.